Okay, so there's a slight change in your schedule. I'm going to take OS right now, and at 11:45, AKG sir will take algorithms, right? So your next class will be AA, and this will be OS. Right? Okay, so let us begin with the concepts of deadlock, right? That's what we were supposed to start today. As you are all clear with processes now, you know what are resources as well, right? What problems occur when we share the resources, that also we have seen, right? So based on that, we are taking up the next chapter, right? Because I don't want to break the change by starting the memory management chapter right now. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to again recall the process concepts if I take up the deadlock in the third sessional, right? So we are going to finish with the process portion, right? In the second sessional phase. And in the third sessional phase, we'll solely focus on the memory management concepts, right? That will be the total concept. Okay. So let me share the slides for the deadlock. So I'm going in sequence. Chapter number 5 is, as I said, 95% complete, except one problem. That is readers, writers, that we will see in the lab. Okay, because it is almost similar to producer consumer. We just have to discuss that problem in detail, right? Solution is more or less similar, right? So that can be done in the lab session. So readers, writers, we won't be keeping in the second sessional syllabus, right? Because that will be covering mostly in the third sessional teaching phase, right? So up to readers, writers, right? That will be in the second session, and then this deadlock concept. Okay. Again, I'll be telling you the syllabus when we'll be finishing with the second sessional teaching. Okay. Fine. So let us begin with deadlock. What is deadlock ideally, right? So in terms of processes, if you think, a set of processes are deadlocked when each process, right, is waiting for an event, right, that can be triggered by other process, right? Each process is waiting for an event that can be triggered by another process, and that process is also blocked at present. Are you getting that scenario? Do you remember this example that I gave you? You have two processes, P1, P2, and R1, R2, right? P1 is holding R1 and it is requesting R2, right? P2 is holding R2, it is requesting R1, right? Now, neither of them can go ahead, right? Because they are holding one resource and they are requesting the other, right? So that is a deadlock situation, fine? So in most of the cases, deadlock occurs when the processes are competing for the same set of resources, right? So if you are having only one instance of that resource, then there is a problem, right? But what if you are having 3 or 4 instances of same resource? Then can we remove the deadlock situation, or can we avoid deadlock? Right, because suppose you have 3 printers attached to your system, right? Let us say 3 resources, right, equal to 3 printers, right? So if 2 processes requesting the printer simultaneously, right, then they won't be blocked because you have 3 resources available, right? But what if you are having only one printer, right? And then there becomes a race condition, right? And when there is a race condition, in the end, it may lead to deadlock. It may, again, right? It depends upon the situation. Okay. One more important point is deadlock is a permanent situation, right? Why we call it permanent? Because until or unless the process which is holding your resource, which is required by you, releases, right, you cannot proceed. And is that process going to release the resource on its own? That's not possible, right? So that's why we call that deadlock is a permanent blocking situation, ideally, right? And according to this, we have actually 2 possibilities. There is one concept called, let us say, potential deadlock, right? And the other concept is known as actual deadlock, right? Potential is something where we are having a situation, right, or allocation of resources at present. If you take a snapshot of your current situation, at that point, if you move one step further, it may lead to deadlock, right? So that is called a potential deadlock situation. That means if you are taking wrong steps, right, in further direction, you might lead to deadlock. That is one situation, right? While what is actual deadlock? Deadlock is already present, right? It has already occurred, right? So what is the ideal situation? What should we design as an algorithm? We should first detect whether there is a potential deadlock situation or not, right? We should keep on checking that, right? Or the other option is you don't let potential deadlock situation occur, right? There are two options. Either you check at present, do we have potential deadlock situation? If yes, then the next steps have to be taken carefully. We will see many examples, right? So don't worry, you will be clear. But the second situation is if deadlock is already present, right? What is the only option to solve that? In database, you studied this concept in brief, right? According to transactions, right? So what is the only solution if deadlock has already occurred? We have to roll back, right? In terms of process and resources, you might have to take away the resources, right? And what do we call that as? Preemption, right? So preemption does not only apply to processes, right? Up till now, what we have said, preemption is you take away the CPU from the process. That's what we call as preemption, right? Another meaning of preemption is you take away the resource from the process. Are you following this? Right? So preemption is defined in the various ways. When we discussed the process chapter, our focus was just processes. We were not focused on the resources. Right now, we are now moving towards process and resource combination, right? So one possible solution is you take away the resource if the process is holding it, right? So that other process does not get deadlock, right? And you can resolve, okay? So there are various ways to handle deadlock and starvation. Actual difference, yes. Starvation is nothing but the process is waiting for a long time, right? Now, if you are waiting for a resource for a long time and that resource is held by another process, can we say it is a deadlock then? Yes, Preet? No, right? Because there has to be a chain, right? There has to be a chain, right? That means P1 is holding a resource, right? It is requesting another resource which is held by the other process, right? So if there is a dependency, then we call it as a deadlock. In starvation, actually, there is not a dependency, right? You are just waiting for the CPU to be released, right? Yes. So these two are actually different concepts, right? And that is why you can see the chapter title is what? It is deadlock and starvation both, right? But most of the part addresses deadlock concept, right? Okay. So let us continue. I'll start with a simple example, right? If you have 4 cars, right, at a junction. Okay. So if car 1 has to cross successfully, it requires quadrant A and B, right? Car number 1. I hope you can see the numbers that are written on the cards, right? Okay. Car 2 requires B and C. Okay. Car C requires C and D, and car 4 requires D and A. Okay. So the problem over here is all 4 cars have reached the junction at the same time. Yes or no? Can you see that mechanism? All 4 cars have reached the junction at the same time. If the cars were reaching at different times, then the junction would be free and then deadlock situation won't occur, right? This is a common traffic issue, right? That's what we face nowadays. So, can I say this is a potential deadlock situation? Yes, because if I take one wrong step ahead, right? In that case, it may lead to deadlock. Okay. Now, what will happen in case of potential deadlock? In this case, you are not holding any resource, right? I'm neither holding A or B or C or D, right? I'm just waiting at the junction, right? But if I enter the junction, right, in that case, the deadlock can occur. Yes, exactly. If all cars start at the same time, they will collide, and that is actual deadlock situation, right? You can see this, right? So now car A has entered one junction. At the same time, car 2 has entered the next junction, 3 and 4 similarly, right? And what each car is thinking, it will not leave that junction until the second junction, which it was requiring, is not free. Now, is that second junction going to be free? No, right? Because every car is thinking this, right? Every car thinks that I am holding one resource and I want the other resource. But actually, can you see there is a chain over here, right? Car 1 is holding which quadrant? A, right? And it requires B, okay? But B is currently held by car 2, okay? Car 2 is currently holding B, it is requiring C, right? Look at this. Similarly, this propagates to fourth car, okay? So neither of the car can proceed, right? This is what happens in real scenario as well, right? In traffic condition. So this is what is deadlock situation. So are you clear with the difference? Potential deadlock and actual deadlock, right? If you are at a potential deadlock situation, you need to be careful, right? That is, you need to design such a strategy that by moving towards the next step, you don't reach actual deadlock, right? Or the other option is you detect that there is a potential deadlock possible in this situation and try to resolve that, okay? So there are two options. And the worst case can be what? Let deadlock occur and then the traffic police will handle it, right? So that is one solution that we can have. But in case of processes, OS has to do all these things, right? So you can see the complexity of OS still rises, right? We have seen process management, we have seen scheduling, right? This is one more concept being added, right? Okay. So let us take a programming example now. Suppose you are given two processes, process P and process Q, right? Situation is both the processes require both the resources, right? That is, process P requires A and B both, right? And process Q also requires A and B both, okay? And they require resources in a mutually exclusive manner. That is another situation. What does that mean? While A is occupied by process P, it cannot be given to process Q, right? Even if it is requesting, right? We have seen mutual exclusion, so now it should be clear, okay? So for uniprocessor system, as we know, only one process can execute at a time, right? Only one process can go through at a time, okay? So given these two programs and this situation, there are 6 scenarios that the author has identified, although there are many possibilities, but they will be redundant actually, right? But 6 unique scenarios are there where we can find out, right, where deadlock is possible and where deadlock is not possible. Okay, so let us go through first scenario, right? First scenario is Q gets B and then A, right? Let us look at the code of Q. Q gets B and then A. Is that fine? Right? Up to that. Then comes P, that is, it releases B and A. Okay. So what is the meaning of these two lines? Q gets B and A, and that releases B and A, right? Can you reframe that in a statement? What is happening over here? Q gets B and A, and it releases B and A. That means Q runs completely, isn't it? Without interruption. Clear? Right? Now P starts, right? So are we going to have deadlock situation or even potential deadlock? No, because both the resources are free, right? So this scenario, this particular scenario is not a deadlock situation, neither it is potential deadlock situation, right? That's what we can identify, right? So you can see that P runs and acquires both A and B, right? So no problem. Look at the second one. Same situation, Q gets B and A, but now Q is preempted, right? Number of reasons are there, right? I'm not going in that detail right now. Q gets preempted, P gets a chance. Okay, now what is the first line in P? Get A, right? Will it block? Obviously yes, right? Because we require mutual exclusion. right? So it will block on get A, right? Now assume that we have only two processes, right? So what will happen next? Q will complete, yes or no, right? So Q will release B and A, right? That is this line. Okay, I'll just highlight so that you can just focus on the line that I'm talking. Q releases B and A, so that means Q is done. Okay, Q is out of your system. Can P be dispatched now? Yes, right? So now, again, do we have any potential deadlock or a real deadlock situation in scenario number 2? No, right? So everything is fine, right? We are lucky in this situation so that the system executes in this manner, right? Now the problem starts, right? So Q gets B, it gets interrupted by P, right? So Q has already acquired B, that is the situation. First line is done, and now you are getting interrupted, okay? And P gets a chance, right? So P will occupy which resource? A, right? Now you are stuck, right? Because what will happen? If P continues, what it requires? B, right? So it will block on the request of B, right? And even if Q gets a chance, it will block on what? A. Are you getting this? Right? So is this a potential deadlock or real deadlock situation? This is the actual deadlock situation, right? If we go through this order, right, then that is a real deadlock situation, right? Okay. So let us go back to that scenario. Q gets B and P gets A, right? Opposite can happen, right? Suppose your dispatcher is dispatching P first, right? So P will get A, okay? Then it gets preempted, okay? Q runs, Q gets B. Same situation occurs, yes or no? So 3 and 4, if you go through those scenarios, it will lead to actual deadlock situation, fine? So if you try to draw a graph of this situation, right? If you're trying X versus Y, where X is process A, or let us say process P, and Y is, or Y-axis is process Q, right? And if you try to draw lines, right, you might reach a section, right, where the actual deadlock is present, right? And that region is called fatal region, right? In terms of OS, that region is known as a fatal region. That means if Q gets B, that line executes, as well as P gets A, that line also executes, right? That means you are at a junction where you cannot proceed, right? And that junction or that area is known as what? Fatal region, right? So as a designer of the operating system, what we should be taking care of? Wherever process in whichever order they execute, right, we should try to enter the fatal region, right? We'll see that graph as well in the next slide. Before that, let us go for 5 and 6, right? Now, the opposite scenario. First, we started with Q, right? Now, see, we are starting with P, right? So P runs completely. That is scenario number 5. P runs completely, get A, get B, release A, release B. And now Q gets a chance. So no deadlock again, right? So that is again obvious situation. And what is the last scenario left? P gets A and B, right? Sorry, scenario number 5 is actually opposite of 2, right? That is this. 5 and 2 are opposites, and 6 and 1 are opposite. I hope you are clear with this, right? Okay, so I'm not going in that detail. Okay, good. So basically, whenever you are having multiple processes and resources, right, you should try to actually analyze your system in such a way that where deadlock is possible, right, where actual deadlock is possible, right, and that region is actually called a fatal region. If you don't enter fatal region, then you might have a potential deadlock situation, right, but actual deadlock is not possible, right? Okay, because if your situation is such that in the next step you are entering fatal region, that means what? You are actually entering the deadlock situation. So you might be in potential deadlock, right? But that is still fine, right? If you don't take the next wrong step, okay? So in summary, we can just have a look at the diagram first, right? You can see this graph, right? See, on the x-axis, we have process P, get A, get B, release A, release B. On y-axis, we have process Q, okay? And if get A is successful for process P and get B is successful for process Q, right? This region is going to take place, right? I'll just zoom in further so that you can read the text, right? So you can see this, right? It is deadlock inevitable. That means it is a actual deadlock situation, right? There are some common regions where both the processes require both resources. You can see this. P and Q both want A, right? And P and Q both want B. But that depends upon the execution, right? So in summary, what we can say is, on which aspects the deadlock depends? Can you tell me what are the factors that deadlock depends? If you are given two programs, yes, what are the possibilities of having deadlock? Yes, sequence of execution, right? That is in which order we execute the instructions, right? Plus resources. Yes, resources have to be there, right? Without that, there is no deadlock situation available, right? Plus your logic, right? Because if I modify this logic slightly, right, whatever is given over here, if I modify it slightly, I can avoid deadlock situation, right? What is the option? If I move this line over here, right, can we avoid that? So a slight change, right, in swapping of two lines, right, can solve the problem, right? So sometimes it is the programmer's fault, right? Programmer has designed the logic in such a way that deadlock is going to be present, right? So we can take care in either of the two ways, right? Either you should check your execution path and make sure that deadlock situation does not reach. Second option is you design your logic in such a way that deadlock never occurs, right? Actually, that is very difficult, right? While programming, we don't think about that concept, right? We don't think about that aspect, right? So that is why OS has many algorithms that takes care of this situation, right? We are going to see that in detail, fine? So as I said, scenario number 3 and 4 are known as what? Fatal region, right? And this diagram which we saw is called joint progress diagram, because two or more processes are executing, although not simultaneously, but in, you can say, which manner? What do we call that as? It is interleaving, right? It is not overlapping, it is interleaving concept, right? If the execution path enters fatal region, deadlock is inevitable. That means it is already present, right? If you take care and your progress does not enter fatal region, deadlock won't occur. That is guaranteed, right? So this is the part where we should take care, right? This line, okay? Fine, let us proceed. So as I told you, this is one of the option, one of the solution, right? You swap get B and release A, right? That will solve. But the programmer has to modify the logic, right? So you need to go back to the programmer and programmer has to change, okay? All of you are clear up to this, right? So main thing you should be clear is where deadlock occurs, that is known as a fatal region, right? And what are the situations, right, that may lead to deadlock? One is your execution scenario, the other is your code, right? That is the possibility of logic. Okay, now let us focus on resource types, because we are going to look at some algorithms, some approaches later on, right? So we should be knowing some terminology before we go for that. So if you think as total number of resources available on your system, right, they can be divided in two types, right? Either reusable resource, right, or they can be called as consumable resource. Okay. Reusable is something which can be safely used by only one process at a time, right? So what is the example of this? You can see this IO channel and memory, right? If you are referring to a memory location, right, if two processes are utilizing that for writing purpose, definitely it cannot be done, right? Because there will be inconsistency, right? And the other property of reusable resources, it is not depleted, right? After you use it, you can put it back into the system, right? It is already there, right? I'm going to give you many examples. This is just one or two examples I've kept over here, okay? Second is consumable resource. Consumable means you can produce it and you can actually consume it. So the example of this is what? The data that we write in the shared area, right? That is your consumable resource, like we have done in the producer consumer problem, right? Producer is generating the characters, right? And consumer is eating them up, right? So after that, there is no item available, fine? So based on the resource type, we need to take care of the deadlock situation, right? That also affects, okay? Over here, we assume that there is no limit on number of resources of any type, right? But actually in practical sense, there is a limit, right? What is the limit you have? Memory capacity, right? I can't produce the items more than the buffer, okay? More than the buffer capacity. We have already seen that problem, okay? Let us have some more examples. Reusable resources have CPU itself is a reusable resource, right? IO channels, main memory, secondary memory, right? Devices, right? As well as your data structures, right? Whatever files we are creating, databases, and semaphores. Why semaphores are present over here? Yes? Because again, they are shared, right? And once you create, until your process is active, semaphore is going to remain, isn't it? Are we explicitly deleting the semaphore? No, right? We have not learned any technique for deleting that semaphore. Okay, so that's why it is also called a reusable resource with time bound, right? Until your process remains, your semaphore is going to be active, right? So that means where the semaphore is declared, until that program is there in main memory, you can say it is active, fine? Let us take one more example over here of deadlock, right? So consider two processes that compete for exclusive access to two devices. One is a disk, we call that as a D, and another is a tape drive, that is T, right? Deadlock will occur if process holds one resource and requests the other. It is very obvious, right? We can also map this to the same example we saw earlier. P1 holding R1, requesting R2, P2 holding R2, requesting R1, right? You just replace that R1 and R2 with device, right? It is the same situation. Let us look at the code over here. Okay, so just observe this situation. Two processes requesting in a particular order. Okay, so give me the steps or order in which deadlock is going to occur. You can see the steps are given as P0, P2, P1, P2, and Q0, Q1, Q2. So what will be the order that leads to actual deadlock situation? Try to observe and find out. Remember, we have two devices, right? P0, P1, right? And then Q0, Q1. Yes, right? So just map this out. If I execute these two statements, right? And then my process is interrupted, right? Or it is preempted. And then Q is getting a chance, right? So it will execute the first two lines, okay? So both the processes are holding one resource each, right? Requesting the other in the next line, they cannot proceed, right? So P0, P1, Q0, Q1, and P2, Q2, right? P2 and Q2, that is this. That is actual deadlock, yes or no? P0, P1, Q0, Q1, and P2, Q2, okay? So if you are having reusable resources, this is the example of having a deadlock situation, right, that involves reusable resources. Are you clear with this? Right? Okay, so if you are given a code, you should be able to identify the situation where deadlock occurs, right? That is one problem you might be given, right, in the examination or anywhere. Fine. So you should be able to simulate and find out, right? That is what is required. Okay, so as I said, it is P0, P1, Q0, Q1, and P2, Q2. That is one possible sequence, right? I can also say Q2 and P2 in the end, right? In the end, Q2 and P2. So there are actually two situations, okay? What is the problem over here? The problem is there in the logic again, right? So that is why detection of the issue becomes very difficult, because you are just detecting that at execution level, right? And what if you are having deadlock across number of processes? You are having hundreds of processes available at present, right? So what you need to do? You need to check actually which processes are involved in this, right? Check their code, and then the problem can be solved, right? So it can be a very costly operation, right, to avoid the deadlock. So that is why ideally what we should do is we should take care while writing the code, right? That is the only option we have. Fine. What is the other solution? Set constraint on the order of resource request, right? How we can do that in this situation? I can design an algorithm where the resources can be requested in a particular order only, right? So I can say that I'm having a linear list of resources, R1, R2, R3, R4, right? If I'm occupying R1, right, I can only request R2, right? If I'm occupying R2, I can only request R3. I cannot request R1. Are you following this? Right? We need to define the ordering of resource allocation. That is one option, right? So that approach we are going to see, right, in detail. That is a one valid approach. That is, you put an ordering on the resources, right? If you are holding one resource, you can request the next resource in chain only. You can't request the backward resource, which is lying on the left-hand side, right? You can only request the right-hand side resource. Yes, that may lead to inefficiency. You might say that, yes or no? But that is one possible solution, right? Yes, there is always a trade-off, right, when we are designing the algorithms and the approaches, right? Okay, so we are going to see that later, fine, that approach. Let us look at one more example of reusable resource. Another reusable resource is a memory, right? So let us look at this. We have 200 KB of space available, right? P1 is having this code, right? And P2 is having this code. So where the deadlock is possible, suppose P1 executes first line, 80 kilobytes are gone, right? So you are left with 120, right? Now P1 is preempted, P2 gets a chance, right? So you are left with 120 minus 70, right? So you will be left with 50 only, right? And then neither of the processes, P1 or P2, can proceed. Got the issue that we are facing, right? So what is the problem over here? We are short of memory, right? And we have a better solution to sort that out. That is, we have not yet discussed that concept, but we have a concept of virtual memory. I hope I have given you that brief, right? What is virtual memory in earlier lectures? Let us just revisit that. Virtual memory is nothing but it is an illusion that you are using your secondary memory as if it is a part of main memory, right? We use the addressing mechanism in such a way that you can actually create an illusion, right? You are actually using your secondary memory, but as if it is a part of main memory, right? So that is a mechanism we are going to see in the third sessional phase. So this problem can be solved still, right? You can still solve this problem by using virtual memory scheme, fine? So there are problems and there are solutions. Taking only required data to main memory out of all. No, that is not called a virtual memory, because see, virtual memory is nothing but you are actually using part of your secondary memory, right? And you generate such addresses, right, that your process will not know that you are using secondary memory, right? process will assume that you are having infinite memory available, right? Suppose your RAM is, let us say, 128 kilobyte, right? What if your process size is more than that? Can we accommodate that? No.
Process is 256 KB.
Yes, yes,
And RAM is 128 KB.
yes.
But the part of process which we
That can be
require
done.
right now
That is one possibility.
is only 100 KB. So
Yes.
we will take only 100 KB, not 28 KB.
Yes.
So it won't create an illusion that we are running a bigger process. than
Exactly,
the-
exactly. So that is one option. That is called bringing only part of the process inside. Right. What Rishi is saying is we have one process of larger size than the memory. You divide the process in two parts, right? You bring only one part of that process at a time. That is one possibility, right? But see, that you can do only for one process, isn't it? What if you want to support multi-programming? Can we go with that approach then? No, right? So if you are having lots of processes in main memory, you need to create an illusion, right? And you might have to think that you are having actually a large amount of memory. That is actually your secondary memory, right? So what happens in background is you are going to have swap in, swap out, right? You are going to bring the part of the process in, you will have to shift your current process out, right? So a lot of swap in, swap out is going to take place. So virtual memory has a trade-off. What is that? You have to access your disk from time to time, right? And when you are accessing the disk, it is time consuming. Definitely, that's correct, right? But still, you can accommodate a process of having larger size than your main memory efficiently, right? Again, we are going to see that in the third sessional phase. Virtual memory is a complete chapter. We'll have at least, if I say roughly, 6 to 7 classes on that, right? So we'll be discussing all possibilities over there, right? So let us now focus on the deadlock again, right? Okay. Consumable resources. Let us take the example of consumable resources. What are the consumable resources? We have interrupts, signals, messages, and the data that we are having in the buffer. Okay. Buffer is which kind of resource? Reusable resource or consumable resource? Buffer is reusable resource. But the data that we have in the buffer, right, that is nothing but consumable resource, right? And if we take a direct example, we have seen message passing recently, right? Yesterday only. So if you assume this code with you, receive with P2 and receive from P1, sorry, receive from P2 and receive from P1, that is the meaning of this, right? And then I'm having send of P2, that is I'm going to send message 1 to P2 and I'm going to send message 2 to P1. So where is deadlock possible in this situation? See, we are keeping the case very simple because we assume that there are only two processes, right? But it is possible in real scenario that 10 processes might be sharing the same resource, right? So the situation gets more complex. So what is the order in which deadlock will take place? Yes, right? So P1 suppose runs this line, receive from P2, right? And still P2 has not sent the message, right? Still P2 has not sent the message, okay? So it will be waiting, fine? Now P2 will get a chance. P2 will execute this line, okay? So P1 has not sent the message because it is waiting for the message from P1, right? And P2 is waiting for the message from P1, right? So P1 is waiting for P2's message, P2 is waiting for P1's message. Deadlock situation? Yes? So neither of the party can proceed. Fine. What is the solution to this? Can anyone suggest the solution? Yes, swapping, right? That is the only thing we can do, right? We need to make sure that both the receive lines don't get executed at the same time, right? Neither they execute in that order. That is, line number 1 is this, right? And line number 2 is this. If that order is followed, there is going to be a deadlock, right? So another solution is, can we let P1 run first completely? Is that possible? Can that be a solution? Can we let completely or can we let P1 execute completely? Sorry. So P1 is waiting for message from P2, right? Can that line be going through without P2 sending a message? No, right? So that is not a solution. Only solution is you have to swap the lines, right? So even if you have a simple message passing, deadlock is possible. Okay. We have not covered the examples of the buffer data, right? But we already know that, right? In case of producer consumer, remember, we have the deadlock situation. Where deadlock occurs in producer consumer using semaphores. Yes, with respect to the data. Can anyone recall that? Where we have seen the deadlock situation. You block in critical section, right? Remember two same wait calls, if you swap them, what was happening? Both are blocked in critical section, right? So that basically one is blocked in critical section and the other wants to enter. That was the situation, right? So if I just recall, same wait on N, right, was done inside or after same wait of S. So consumer runs same wait of S, right? That call will be successful because S is currently 1, right? Now the buffer is empty, right? Buffer is empty. So next line is same wait on N, right? So what will happen to consumer? It will block, right? Can the producer continue in that situation? Consumer is blocked for what? Consumer is blocked on empty buffer condition, right? Now who can make that consumer come out of critical section? It is producer, right? Can producer enter critical section? Can producer enter critical section? No, because consumer is blocked where? Inside critical section, right? So consumer is holding the critical section and it is blocked on the empty buffer. Okay, so neither of the party can proceed. Okay, which is that example, consumable resource, or it is example of reusable resource? It is consumable because you are waiting for an item, right? You are actually waiting for an item, right? Are you clear with this, all of you? Right, so I just recall that concept, right? So that can refresh. I hope you have not forgotten that. Fine. At same level, both are having same task. Deadlock can occur. Yes, Anish, that's correct. That is the actual scenario which we need to prevent, right? Okay. So let us proceed with the notation now, right? Deadlocks are actually depicted by using graphs, right? And they are known as resource allocation graphs, right? So you can see one example over here. Processes are drawn as circles. That is the first notation. Processes are drawn as circles. Resources are drawn as squares, right? That is the second notation. And resource instances are drawn as dots. Resource instances are drawn as dots. Can you see this dot over here? Right? What does that mean? What is the interpretation? Yes, resource RA is having only one copy. That means if you are having a printer, you have one printer on your system, right? What if you had 3 IO channels? Let us forget about printer. What if you had 3 IO channels? There will be 3 dots, right? That is the notation you generally see in the operating system textbooks or even in the competitive examinations. If you are given a graph, you should be able to detect whether this is a deadlock situation or is it a potential deadlock situation or it is a no deadlock situation. By looking at this notation, you can actually find out that, right? Okay. So when another notation is requesting a resource, right? So when you are requesting a resource, right, the arrow goes from process to resource, right? You can see this arrow is not connected. Can you see this, right? It is not pointed to the dot. It is outside the box. That means you are requesting, okay? When the resource is allocated, you actually connect the dot with the process. Is this concept clear? What is the difference between request versus holding a resource? As I told you, you might be given a graph, right? And you have to detect What is the situation, right? So that's why I'm going in detail. So these are the basic notations we use, right? Let us take some more examples. Okay, let us focus on this part, right? Process P1 is requesting RA, right? And we are having only one instance of RA and RB both. Okay. RA is currently held by P2. Okay. P2 is requesting RB. RB is held by P1. So what is this situation? Potential or actual? It is actual deadlock, right? We also term this as a circular wait condition. We will see this term later also, right? Why it is called circular wait? Because you are waiting for one resource which is held by the next process in chain. If you think this about as a chain, right, or as a circular queue or circular linked list, you can map this easily, right? Can you understand the reason behind that naming convention, right? So this will be revisiting very soon, right? Circular wait is actually an important condition to consider, okay, while we are having deadlock. Okay, what about this situation, second situation? It is no deadlock, right? Can you see why it is no deadlock? Because there are multiple instances of each resource available, right? So I hope you can get some idea. If you want to avoid deadlock situation, what we can do? Increase the number of resources. But is that always possible? No, right? And that is the competition. That is actually called a race condition, right? We are competing for the resources, right? So that is not actually possible, right? But yes, if you take example of IO devices, or if you take example of IO channels, generally they are in multi, right? So in that case, you can say that this is a practical diagram. This is still possible, okay? But if you are having a resource like printer, right, or even your terminal, right, your monitor, keyboard, we just have one copy of that, right? We don't have multiple copies. So in that case, yes, we can lead to deadlock. Okay, focus on this diagram. Sorry, I shifted that. Okay, I'm zooming further so that you can see that clearly. Which is this diagram? Sorry. We have seen this earlier. This diagram is pointing to the car problem, right? If you assume that P1, P2, P3, and P4 are 4 cars, and RA, RB, RC, and RD are junctions, right? So what was the deadlock situation? P1 was holding junction A, and it is requesting B, right? But that B is held by P2, okay, and P2 is requesting C, and the chain goes on. Can I say this is circular wait once again? Yes or no? This is again a circular wait condition. Okay. So let me ask a direct question. If you can omit circular wait situation from your scenario, whatever scenario that occurs at runtime, if you can omit circular wait condition, can we say that we have avoided deadlock? Think about that. It might still be potential deadlock situation, right? But if circular wait is there, right, then what can we say confidently? It is a deadlock situation, right? So what is the best thing we can try? Avoid circular wait, right? That is one thing we can try. It may be prevented. Yes, that's correct, right? So if you avoid circular wait situation by checking your runtime situation of allocation, right, we may be at the verge of deadlock, but deadlock situation won't be entered, right? But that's not again always possible. Right? It's very difficult to prevent that situation. We'll see this approaches, right, very soon. Okay, so are you clear with the allocation graph notations, right? You might see similar examples in the competitive examinations or in different textbooks, right? But this is the general notation we follow, okay? Fine. So now let us enter the details of deadlock. What are the conditions that must hold true, right, for a potential deadlock, right? Although it is written as possible deadlock, but the another name of that is possible potential deadlock. Fine. So if these three conditions hold together, I'm repeating, if these three conditions, which are marked in maroon, are holding together, there is potential deadlock situation. Why? Let us see. Right. The first situation is mutual exclusion. Right. As we all know, mutual exclusion is nothing but only one process can use the resource at a time. Right. If I add one more constraint, hold and wait, what is that? Process holds the allocated resource while awaiting the assignment of the other. That means if you are in the critical section and if you are holding one resource, right? Yes, we'll see Urjit very soon. Circular wait, right? That is coming up in the next slide. Right? So mutual exclusion is there, assume, and hold and wait is also there. Are we moving towards deadlock situation? Can we say that? You can easily imagine this, right? We have seen many examples. Okay. If I add one more constraint on the top of this, right? That is no preemption. No preemption means what? You can't take away that resource which is held by that process. So further restriction. You are in critical section, holding that resource, and that resource cannot be preempted. Right? If these three hold together, it is a potential deadlock. Why? Because what if the second process is not running at this time? Right? The second process starts and wants to use the same resource. Yes, you may enter deadlock situation. And that is why, what do we call this situation as? It is a potential deadlock. Just before you are at the gate of deadlock, you can say. Right? Can you understand this or not, right? So these three are actually called necessary condition. Now I think you can understand this naming convention, right? They are called necessary condition. That means it is necessary for all of them to hold, right? What if any one of them is false? What if any one of them is false? That means, let us think about no preemption, right? You can preempt. If you can preempt, then deadlock situation will never occur, isn't it? It may occur, right? But we are reducing the possibility. Yes or no? We are reducing the possibility, right? So if any one of the condition can be avoided, still we can say that deadlock may not occur. I am again saying may not, right? Because we don't know what may be the further execution scenario. Are you clear with this? Right? So that's why they are known as necessary conditions. But now comes the circular wait, right? If I add circular wait to this list, right? What can we say? It is the actual deadlock situation, right? So what is the condition for actual deadlock? All three or initial three plus one, that is circular wait, right? That signifies the actual deadlock situation. All of you are clear up to this, right? And the circular wait is irresolvable ideally, right? Because why it is irresolvable? Yes, can you tell me? That will be my last question for today. Why circular wait cannot be resolved? Because first three conditions are strictly held, right? You can't take away resource, that is you can't do preemption, right? The process won't release the resource on its own because it is having hold and wait. Neither it will leave critical section, right? So there is no scope. And that is why if you enter circular wait situation, there is no way to come back, right? What is the only option you have? Break any one of the three conditions, right? And then you hope, right, that it might still not lead to deadlock. Are you getting this? Right? That's why this is a very interesting concept. Fine. Okay. So we'll start with the approaches next time. That is tomorrow. Okay. We have seen the introduction. Fine. Thank you. Let us end this session.